Welcome back to Bardic Sleep Stories. As the world outside grows quiet and the shadows lengthen, we return once more to the sanctuary of the past. Take a deep, slow breath, feeling the air fill your lungs before releasing it fully. Let your shoulders drop, allow the muscles in your face to soften, and feel the weight of your body sink into the comfort of your bed. You are safe, you are still, and you are ready to travel through time. The stories we tell here are long, steady, and detailed. They are designed to occupy the wandering mind with the gentle rhythm of history, providing a path that leads away from the worries of today and toward a deep restorative sleep. There is no pressure to follow every word or reach the end of the chronicle. Whether you drift away in 5 minutes or 50, the story will remain here, a constant and calming presence in the dark. Tonight, we immerse ourselves in a grand and sprawling narrative. We shall set aside the haste of the modern age to observe the slow turning of the wheel of power, focusing on the textures of life, the echoes of ancient stone, and the quiet legacy of those who came before us. Our journey this evening leads us into the heart of a vast and storied heritage. We begin our exhaustive exploration of the desert caravan. The location is the deep interior dunes of the Arabian Peninsula, and the time is the late 19th century. The sun, a disk of burning bronze, has just begun to dip below the western horizon, painting the vast ocean of sand in shades of violet, bruised orange, and deep indigo. The heat of the day, which has pressed down upon the earth like a heavy woolen blanket, finally begins to lift. The air turns instantly cooler, a welcome caress against the skin. Across the ridge of a massive sculpting dune moves a long serpentine line of shapes. It is the caravan, a procession of 20 dromedary camels moving with a slow, hypnotic rhythm. Their padded feet strike the sand with a soft, almost silent thud, a sound that is absorbed instantly by the immensity of the desert. The only noise is the creaking of the leather saddles and the soft, rhythmic breathing of the beasts as they navigate the cooling sands. The leader of the caravan, a man whose face is weathered by 50 years of wind and sun, raises a hand wrapped in indigo cloth. It is the signal to halt. The caravan has reached the Al-Manak, the resting place. It is a flat depression between two shielding dunes, offering protection from the wind that will rise in the night. The camels, sensing the end of the day's labor, let out low, rumbling groans of anticipation. The riders tap the necks of their mounts with camel sticks, giving the guttural command to kneel. Ich, ich. The great beasts fold their front legs first, dropping to their calloused knees with a lurching motion, followed by the folding of the hind legs. They settle into the sand like ships running aground, their bellies resting on the cool earth. The riders dismount, their feet sinking into the soft, granular surface. The silence of the desert is broken by the sounds of industry. There is the heavy slap of leather straps being undone, the rattle of wooden frames, and the thud of heavy saddlebags hitting the ground. These bags are woven from goat hair and dyed in patterns of red and black, containing the lifeblood of the journey: dates, dried meat, sacks of rice, and the precious water skins made of cured goat hides. The men move with practiced efficiency, checking the animals for saddle sores, rubbing their dusty flanks, and hobbling their front legs with soft rope to prevent them from wandering too far in the night. The camels begin to chew their cud, their jaws moving in a slow sideways rhythm, their large dark eyes watching the men with an expression of ancient, stoic patience. With the animals tended to, the men turn their attention to the construction of their shelter, the Beit al-Shah, or the House of Hair. This is not a flimsy canvas structure, but a marvel of nomadic engineering evolved over thousands of years. The tent cloth is woven from the hair of black goats, a material that is coarse, heavy, and miraculously adaptable. In the heat of the day, the loose weave allows air to circulate, casting a deep, cool shade. But if it rains, the fibers swell, becoming watertight. Tonight, however, it is the barrier against the chill of the desert night. The men unroll the long black strips of fabric. They drive wooden pegs deep into the sand with heavy mallets. Thump, thump, thump. The sound is dull and flat. They raise the main poles, creating the peaks of the roof. The fabric pulls tight, creating a long, low structure that hugs the ground, aerodynamic against the wind. Inside, they hang a curtain called the quata, dividing the space into sections. The ground inside the tent is swept clean of stones and scorpions. They unroll the carpets. These are the kilims, thick, flat woven rugs patterned in geometric diamonds and triangles of deep madder red, indigo blue and natural wool white. The bare sand is transformed instantly into a parlor of softness and color. To step from the cold, gritty sand onto the thick wool of the carpet is to step from the wild into the domestic. The tent smells of lanolin, old wood smoke, and the dust of 100 previous campsites. It is a portable palace, a home that can be rolled up and carried across the emptiness, providing a consistent, familiar sanctuary in a landscape that is constantly changing. In the center of the men's section of the tent, a shallow pit is scooped out of the sand to serve as the hearth. One of the younger men brings an armful of dara wood, the white saxaul shrub that grows in the arid wastes. This wood is prized above all others. It burns with a fierce, clean heat and produces very little smoke, leaving behind a bed of long-lasting white ash. He strikes a steel against a piece of flint. Click, spark, the tinder catches. A small flame, yellow and fragile, dances, and he feeds it carefully, nurturing the light until the wood catches. The firelight pushes back the encroaching darkness, illuminating the interior of the tent in flickering shades of orange and gold. It is time for the central ritual of Bedouin hospitality, the making of the coffee, or al-qahwa. The coffee maker, usually the host or an elder, takes a handful of green coffee beans and places them in a long-handled iron skillet. He holds them over the flames, shaking the pan rhythmically. The beans begin to roast, turning from pale green to cinnamon to a rich dark brown. The aroma that rises is complex and earthy, smelling of roasted nuts and smoke. It is a scent that signals civilization. Once roasted, the beans are poured into a wooden cooling box to rest. The fire crackles softly, a comforting percussion to the silent symphony of the night. The men gather around the hearth, their faces illuminated by the glow, watching the process with reverent attention. This is not merely the preparation of a beverage, it is a sacred performance of community and peace. The roasted beans are now ready for the mihabai, a large wooden mortar and pestle that is often ornately carved. The host tips the beans into the deep wooden bowl. He takes the heavy pestle and begins to pound. Thud clack, thud clack. He does not just crush the beans, he creates a rhythm. The ringing sound of the pestle hitting the sides of the mortar is a musical note, a signal to anyone in the hearing distance of the desert that guests are welcome. He adds a few pods of green cardamom to the mixture, crushing them to release their sweet floral fragrance. The smell of the spice mixes with the dark roast of the coffee, creating a perfume that is synonymous with the desert night. The powder is tipped into a large copper pot, the dala, filled with water boiling on the coals. The liquid foams up, a rich golden froth. The host watches it carefully, lifting the pot from the fire just as it threatens to boil over, then returning it to the heat. He repeats this 3 times, a process known as al-talqima. Finally, he pours the coffee into a smaller, ornate pouring pot. He takes a stack of small, handleless cups in his right hand. He approaches the guests. He pours a small amount, barely a sip, into the first cup. The liquid is dark and clear, smelling of spice and focus. Clink. The spout of the pot hits the cup. He offers it to the guest on his right. The man accepts it with a murmur of thanks. They sip the bitter, aromatic brew in silence. Outside the tent, the desert has disappeared into absolute blackness, save for the canopy of stars that stretches from horizon to horizon, a glittering roof of diamonds watching over the small, warm circle of men. As the small cups of bitter coffee are drained and refilled, a profound calm settles over the assembly. The caffeine sharpens the mind, but the warmth of the fire relaxes the body. The conversation begins slowly, drifting like smoke. It starts with the practicalities of the journey, the state of the grazing in the wadi they passed, the depth of the water in the last well, the tracks of a gazelle seen near the dunes. These are the news items of the desert, vital intelligence shared in low, murmuring voices. The host then brings out a large, round tray of dates. These are not the dry, hard dates of the export market, but rutab, dates at the peak of ripeness, soft, translucent, and dripping with their own honey-like syrup. They are piled in a sticky amber mound. The men reach out with their right hands, picking up the fruit. The texture is yielding and sweet. They eat them with the coffee, the intense sweetness of the date balancing the sharp bitterness of the cardamom-infused brew. It is a perfect chemical pairing. Alongside the dates, a bowl of jamid is passed. Hard, dried balls of fermented yogurt. A man breaks off a piece and lets it dissolve on his tongue. It is salty and sour, replacing the electrolytes lost in the day's sweat. The meal is simple, uncooked, and ancient. It is the food of survival, stripped of all excess, yet in this setting, under the shelter of the goat hair roof, it feels like a feast. The firelight glints off the copper of the coffee pot and the white teeth of the men as they smile. The desert outside is a vast, cold ocean, but here, in the circle of the hearth, is an island of warmth and abundance. The wind outside begins to pick up, whispering over the crest of the dunes and rustling the edges of the tent cloth. The house of hair responds, straining gently against its ropes. Creak, snap. The men do not look up. They trust the weave. The conversation shifts from the news of the day to the stories of the past. One of the elders, a man with a beard like white-spun wool, clears his throat. He begins to recite poetry. This is Nabati poetry, the vernacular verse of the Bedouin. He speaks not of kings and palaces, but of the things they know. The longing for rain, the beauty of a fast camel, the bravery of ancestors, and the pain of lost love. His voice is rhythmic and melodious, rising and falling like the dunes themselves. He uses metaphors drawn from their world. A woman's eyes are like the eyes of a wild oryx. A generous man is like a rain cloud in spring. The men listen with rapt attention. In a culture with no books, the poet is the library. He holds the history of the tribe in his memory. He tells the story of the Battle of the Empty Quarter, a skirmish fought over a waterhole 3 generations ago. He describes the flash of the swords, the dust rising to the sky, the cries of the brave. The listeners nod, murmuring, Allah, Allah, in appreciation of a particularly beautiful line. The fire burns low, turning to a bed of glowing red embers. The poet's voice weaves a spell, connecting the men in the tent to their grandfathers and their great-grandfathers, a chain of memory that stretches back through the centuries, unbroken by the shifting sands. While the men talk, the life of the camp continues in the shadows beyond the firelight. A young boy, perhaps 12 years old, is tasked with checking the camels. He steps out of the tent into the chill of the night. The temperature has dropped dramatically. The sand is now cold to the touch. The sky is an overwhelming spectacle. Without the interference of city lights or humidity, the Milky Way appears as a solid, luminous band of cloud, so bright it casts faint shadows on the ground. The stars are not just points of light, they are burning fires, blue, red, gold. He can see the constellation of Al-Thuraya, the Pleiades, rising in the east, the marker of the winter rains. He walks among the kneeling camels. They are massive dark shapes in the starlight. He hears the soft grinding of their teeth as they chew their cud. Crunch, grind, crunch. One of them, a white female, turns her head to look at him, her large eyes reflecting the starlight with a greenish glow. He checks her hobbles. He speaks to her softly, scratching the thick wool between her ears. She lets out a low, gurgling sigh, a sound of contentment. The smell of the camels is strong, musky, dusty. It is the smell of wealth and survival. The boy feels a deep sense of peace. He is alone with the herd, under the roof of the universe. The silence of the desert is not empty, it is full of presence. He stands for a moment, breathing in the cold, clean air, feeling the vastness of the world around him before turning back to the warmth of the tent. Back inside the tent, the coffee ceremony has given way to the preparation of tea. While coffee is the drink of welcome and ritual, tea is the drink of relaxation and the long night. A small blue enamel teapot is placed on the embers. It is filled with water, loose black tea leaves, and a generous amount of sugar. As it boils, the man tending the fire adds a handful of fresh herbs gathered from a damp patch in the wadi earlier that day. Maramiya, sage, or perhaps habak, wild mint. The scent changes. The earthy smell of coffee is replaced by the sweet, herbal fragrance of the tea. It boils vigorously, the lid of the pot rattling, clink, clink. The tea maker pours the dark amber liquid into small glass cups, distinct from the ceramic coffee cups. He lifts the pot high, pouring a long, thin stream that cascades into the glass, creating a thick head of white foam. This aeration cools the tea slightly and releases the aroma. He passes the glasses around. The men hold the hot glass in their fingers, blowing on the foam. The tea is syrupy sweet and intensely flavored with the herbs. It is a comfort drink. The conversation becomes softer, more intimate. They speak of their families left behind in the summer camps, of the price of wool in the markets of Damascus, of the health of their children. The formality of the coffee circle dissolves into the easy camaraderie of shared travel. They are brothers of the road, bound together by the hardship of the desert and the sweetness of the tea. The night deepens, moving towards midnight. The fire has burned down to a pile of white ash covering a heart of red heat. The men begin to prepare for sleep. They do not have beds. They sleep where they sit, on the carpets. They unroll thick sheepskin cloaks known as farwa, lined with soft wool. They wrap themselves in these heavy garments, pulling the hoods up over their heads. The tent, which was a parlor and a dining room, now becomes a dormitory. The light of the fire is just a faint glow now, enough to see the outline of the central pole and the sleeping forms of the companions. The wind has died down, leaving a profound stillness. The only sound is the rhythmic breathing of the men and the occasional rustle of a body turning on the rug. The leader of the caravan, the last to sleep, sits for a moment longer. He takes his misbahar, a string of prayer beads made of olive wood, and passes them through his fingers. Click, click, click. He recites the 99 names of God in a whisper. He listens to the desert. He hears the cry of a desert fox, a high, yipping sound far in the distance. He hears the camels shifting their weight in the sand. He feels the cold air seeping under the edge of the tent cloth, but his cloak is warm. He is content. He has guided his people and his beasts safely to another resting place. The day's journey is done. He extinguishes the last flame of the darkness fills the tent, a soft velvety weight. He lies down, resting his head on his saddlebag, and closes his eyes, drifting into sleep to the rhythm of the breathing desert. Outside the woven black walls of the tent, the great dromedaries have settled into the rhythm of their own nocturnal existence. These beasts are biological marvels, engineered by evolution for this precise environment. As they rest, their internal furnaces are banking down. A camel does not maintain a constant body temperature like a human. Instead, they allow their heat to drop with the cool of the night, preserving energy for the coming day. They sit with their legs tucked beneath them, forming solid islands of warmth in the cooling sand. Their thick, woolly coats, the color of coffee and cream, insulate them against the sudden drop in temperature. If you were to stand close, you would hear the complex gurgling symphony of their digestion. They possess 3 stomachs, a fermentation factory that extracts every ounce of moisture and nutrient from the thorny acacia and dry grasses they consume during the march. One of the large males shifts his weight, the leather of his hobbles creaking softly. He blinks slowly. His eyes are protected by a double row of long, interlocking lashes, designed to seal out the sandstorms, but now they serve to filter the starlight. He is chewing his cud, a slow, sideways grinding of the jaw that is hypnotic to watch. Grind, slide, grind. It is a sound of contentment. These animals are not merely beasts of burden, they are the partners of the tribe. They carry the house, the water, and the children. In the silence of the night, they are the living wall that surrounds the sleepers, a barrier of muscle and bone standing between the men and the void. Their breathing is slow and rhythmic, releasing small clouds of vapor that vanish instantly in the dry air. They are the patient sentinels of the camp, watching the horizon with eyes that have seen the desert for 1,000 generations. The desert floor, which during the noon hours was a sterile anvil of heat, now comes alive with a secret, microscopic industry. The sand itself is losing its thermal energy, radiating the day's absorbed solar power back into the black vacuum of space. If you were to place your hand on the surface, you would feel the coolness seeping into your palm, a stark contrast to the burning touch of the afternoon. In this cooling window, the little people of the dunes emerge. A lesser jerboa, a tiny rodent with legs like a kangaroo and ears like a radar dish, hops silently from its burrow. Hop, pause, hop. It moves with weightless grace, its long tail acting as a counterbalance. It is searching for seeds and dry roots, its large black eyes scanning for the shadow of an owl. Nearby, a darkling beetle, black and armored like a tiny tank, trudges up the steep face of a ripple mark. It leaves a delicate tracery trail in the dust, a script that will be erased by the morning wind. A scorpion, translucent and yellow under the starlight, moves with robotic precision near the base of a rock, sensing the vibrations of the night. This is a world of silence and stealth. There are no loud calls, no rustling leaves. The struggle for survival here is played out in pantomime. The desert is not dead. The cooling air carries the faint dusty scent of dried sagebrush and ancient pulverized rock, the smell of a landscape that has been dry for 10,000 years. Even the rocks seem to relax, contracting slightly as they cool, occasionally emitting a sharp tick sound that startles the silence, the only voice of the geology itself speaking to the night. Return now to the interior of the Beit al-Shah, the House of Hair. The fire has finally died, leaving only a mound of grey ash that retains a faint, ghostly warmth. The darkness is absolute, save for the starlight filtering through the coarse weave of the roof like 1,000 tiny pinpricks. The air inside is thick and still, smelling of wool, sleeping men, and the lingering sweet spice of the cardamom coffee. The breathing of the travelers creates a collective rhythm, a slow oceanic rise and fall that fills the space. Inhale, pause, exhale. They are deep in the sleep of the just, the exhaustion of the body granting them a total release from the mind. In this state, the Bedouin dream. They do not dream of cities or oceans. They dream of the things they love. They dream of rain falling on the parched wadi, turning the brown earth to a carpet of sudden vibrant green. They dream of the birth of a white camel foal, a sign of supreme luck. They dream of the hunt, of the falcon diving from the blue sky. These dreams are vivid and saturated with color, a compensation for the monochrome palette of their waking lives. The leader shifts in his sleep, murmuring a single word in Arabic, perhaps the name of a horse or a son, before sinking back into the silence. The tent is a capsule of humanity, a bubble of soft breath and warm blood, floating in the vast, indifferent mineral ocean of the night. The heavy rugs beneath them insulate them from the cold ground, a layer of civilization woven in patterns of red and indigo that holds them safe until the morning. Above the sleeping camp, the sky performs its slow, majestic rotation. In the clear, dry air of the desert, the stars are not distant decorations, they are overwhelming physical presences. The sheer density of the light is staggering. The Milky Way is a river of crushed diamond, a textured band of luminosity that divides the heavens. To the Bedouin, the sky is a map, a clock, and a calendar. They know the stars as intimate friends. They see Suhail, Canopus, the second brightest star, rising low in the south, signaling the end of the intense heat. They track the Banat Naash, the daughters of the Beer, the constellation known in the west as the Big Dipper, circling the fixed point of the North Star. This celestial navigation is vital. In a landscape with no roads and shifting landmarks, the stars are the only constants. A traveler can read his latitude by the height of the pole star. He can tell the season by the rising of the Pleiades. The silence of the desert seems to amplify the visual noise of the sky. It is a dome of infinite depth. Occasionally, a meteor streaks across the blackness, a shooting star said to be a stone thrown by the angels to drive away the eavesdropping jinn. It flares green and gold for a split second, then vanishes, leaving the stillness intact. The universe feels close here, pressing down on the earth, wrapping the sleeping caravan in a cloak of cosmic light. The constellations wheel silently westward, marking the passage of the hours for no one but the watchful eye of the camel and the sleeping soul of the traveler. The night moves into the wolf watch, the deepest, coldest, and most silent part of the darkness, just before the first hint of dawn. The temperature has bottomed out, bringing a sharp, biting chill that seeps through the gaps in the tent cloth. The sand is now cold as marble. The silence is so profound it rings in the ears, a high, thin frequency that is the sound of total absence. There is no wind, no insect noise, no movement. It is as if the earth has stopped spinning. The leader of the caravan wakes. He does not move. He simply opens his eyes. He is attuned to the rhythm of the night, and something in the quality of the silence has alerted him. He listens. He hears the soft huff of a camel exhaling outside. He hears the settling of the charcoal in the pit. There is no threat, only the immense weight of the solitude. He sits up slowly, pulling his sheepskin cloak tighter around his shoulders. He crawls to the flap of the tent and lifts it. The cold air hits his face like water. He looks out. The camp is a study in stillness. The camels are motionless mounds. The dunes are silver waves frozen in time. He feels a sense of profound insignificance, a feeling that is not frightening, but liberating. In the city, a man is defined by his job, his house, his rank. Here, he is just a speck of dust under the stars. He breathes in the purity of the night, offering a silent prayer of gratitude for the safety of the dark, before lying back down to catch the last hour of rest before the sun commands the day. He closes his eyes, merging once again with the deep, dreamless slumber of the sands. The first indication that the night is ending is not a rising sun, but a subtle, vertical pillar of white light extending up from the eastern horizon. This is the false dawn, or Sub al-Kadib, a phenomenon caused by sunlight reflecting off cosmic dust. It splits the darkness like a pale sword, ghostly and faint, yet distinct enough to silhouette the jagged spine of the distant dunes. The temperature at this hour is at its absolute lowest. The desert has surrendered every ounce of heat it possessed to the void, and the air is now sharp, brittle, and piercingly cold. Frost, rare but possible in the deep winter of the interior, dusts the edges of the coarse desert grass, sparkling like crushed glass in the wan light. The stillness is somehow heavier now, a breathless pause before the world inhales. Inside the house of hair, the breathing of the sleepers changes. The deep, rhythmic slumber of the night becomes shallower. The body senses the shift in the light even behind closed eyelids. The leader of the caravan throws off his heavy sheepskin cover. He sits up, his breath pluming in white clouds before his face. He rubs his hands together, the dry skin rasping. Swish, swish, trying to generate friction and warmth. He looks around the tent. The fire pit is dead, a circle of grey ash. The water in the skins is cold enough to make the teeth ache. He stands, his stiff joints cracking, and steps out into the monochrome world. The sand is grey, the sky is grey, and the camels are dark grey mounds. It is a world waiting for colour. He wraps his bisht, his outer cloak tighter against the biting chill, and turns his face to the east, watching the pale lights slowly broaden and soften, transforming from the vertical shaft of the false dawn to the horizontal spread of the true morning. The leader cups his hands around his mouth and breaks the silence of the dunes with the most ancient and enduring call of the desert, As-salatu kairun min ananom. He intones, his voice rough with sleep, but resonant. Prayer is better than sleep. The words carry far in the thin, cold air. Inside the tent the men stir. There is a rustle of wool, a groan of waking muscles, and the soft thud of bodies sitting up. They emerge one by one, shivering, pulling their cloaks tight. There is no water to spare for washing this morning. Every drop in the goat skins is calculated for survival. Instead, they perform tayammum, the dry ablution permitted by their faith in the absence of water. They crouch down and strike their hands palms down onto the clean, windswept sand. Pat. They rub their hands over their faces and arms, the fine, cool dust serving as the purifying element. It is a ritual of humility, connecting the believer directly to the earth from which he was made. They line up in a single row, shoulder to shoulder, facing Mecca. The leader steps forward. In the grey light, they bow and prostrate themselves, their foreheads touching the cold sand. Rustle, silence, murmur. The synchronization is perfect. They rise and fall like a single organism. The prayer is short, the Fajr, the dawn prayer, consisting of 2 cycles of movement. In this vast, empty landscape, the act of prayer feels intensely intimate. There are no walls, no mosque, no ceiling but the fading stars. It is just the men and their Creator performing the timeless duty of gratitude before the sun rises to dominate the world once more. With the spiritual duty discharged, the immediate physical priority becomes warmth. The youngest member of the group moves quickly to the fire pit. He digs down through the insulating layer of white ash from the night before, searching for the seed fire. He finds a few embers that still glow with a dull cherry-red heat. He places a handful of dry desert grass and small twigs directly onto the coals. He blows gently, "Ooh, ooh," feeding oxygen to the faint spark. Smoke rises, thick and white, smelling of the previous night's coffee and burnt wood. Suddenly, a small yellow flame jumps to life, hungry and bright. He feeds it larger branches of the Garda wood. The fire catches crackling loudly in the quiet morning. The men gather around the growing blaze, extending their hands toward the heat. They rub their palms, turning them over and over, washing them in the warmth. The fire is the focal point of the camp once again. It pushes back the grey gloom and paints their faces in flickering orange. The water kettle is placed on the stones. Clank. The sound of the metal is sharp. As the water begins to heat, a small amount of steam rises, dissolving into the dry air. The leader sits on his heels near the fire, his eyes scanning the horizon. The sky is changing now, the grey giving way to a pale, translucent blue, and the rim of the horizon is stained with a band of soft apricot light. The day has officially begun, and with it the return of the heat and the labor of the crossing. The morning meal in the desert is not a leisurely feast like the dinner of the night. It is a functional intake of fuel for the hard hours ahead. The coffee pot is passed around, but this time the consumption is quick. The coffee is hot, bitter, and strong, shocking the system awake. There is no tea this morning. There is no time for the steeping. The men reach into the leather food bags and pull out handfuls of hard, dry dates. These are different from the soft, syrup-laden dates of the evening. These are tam, dried on the palm until they are chewy and dense, packed with concentrated energy. They eat them in silence, their jaws working the fibrous fruit. Chew, swallow, sip. Some of the men take pieces of hard, unleavened bread left over from days past, dipping it into the dregs of the coffee to soften it. It is a austere breakfast, stripped of all luxury, designed only to sustain. They check their own water skins, taking a measured drink. The water is cold and tastes faintly of the goat hide and the tar used to seal the seams, a distinct metallic flavor that is the taste of survival. They are fueling their bodies like engines. The conversation is sparse, limited to commands and logistics. Check the girth on the red camel. Tighten the load on the grey. The social camaraderie of the night has been replaced by the focused discipline of the march. They wipe their mouths, stand up, and brush the crumbs from their beards. The fire is allowed to die down. The time for resting is over. The sun is crowning the dunes, and the road is waiting. The camp now erupts into a flurry of organized chaos as the men turn to the camels. The beasts are reluctant to rise from the warm depressions they have melted into the sand. They let out long, complaining groans, a sound unique to the camel, a mixture of a growl and a gargle, as the men approach with the saddles. The heavy wooden frames are lifted onto the humps. Thump, creak, the girth straps are pulled tight. The camels protest, turning their long necks to nip at the air, their large teeth clicking. It is a ritual dance of dominance and cooperation. The men soothe them with low guttural sounds, slapping their necks firmly. Then comes the loading. The heavy bags of rice, the rolled-up tents, and the water skins are hoisted up. Heave, grunt, lash. The weight must be perfectly balanced on either side of the saddle. An uneven load will cause sores and slow the animal down. The ropes are knotted with practiced speed. Finally, the command is given to rise. Hayya, hut. The camels lurch upwards, back legs first, pitching the load forward, then the front legs straighten. They stand tall, towering over the men, looking down with their disdainful, heavy-lidded eyes. The camp is dismantled. The tent is gone, rolled into a long black cylinder. The fire is buried in sand. The carpets are packed. In the space of 20 minutes, the domestic sanctuary of the night has vanished, leaving nothing but a patch of disturbed sand and the footprints of men and beasts. The caravan is reformed, a line of laden ships ready to set sail once more across the ocean of dunes. The caravan is now in motion, a single articulated entity winding its way through the valleys of the dunes. The sun has detached itself fully from the horizon, hanging as a disk of blinding white gold in the eastern sky. The shadows, which were stretched and distorted at dawn, begin to shorten, retreating toward the feet of the camels, like puddles of drying ink. The rhythm of the march is established. It is a slow, rolling cadence that will define the next 10 hours of their lives. The camels move with a pacing gait, lifting both legs on one side simultaneously, which creates a distinct rocking motion, sway left, sway right. To the uninitiated, this motion can be nauseating, a seasickness of the dry land. But the Bedouin riders move with it. Their bodies are loose and fluid, absorbing the lurch of the stride in their lower backs. They do not fight the movement, they surrender to it. The silence of the march is different from the silence of the night. It is the silence of endurance. There is no conversation now. Talk dries the throat and wastes breath. The only sounds are the soft, rhythmic huff-huff-huff of the camel's breathing, the creaking of the wooden saddle frames, and the soft swish of the sand being displaced by 80 padded feet. The sand itself seems to change color as the sun climbs higher. The gray of the dawn has burned away, replaced by a dazzling high-contrast palette of ochre, apricot, and deep burnt sienna. The grains of sand glitter like crushed diamonds. The air is still cool, but there is a promise of heat in the sunlight that strikes the men's backs, a gentle warming that will soon turn into a furnace. The caravan moves as a silent line of ants across the face of a sleeping giant, leaving behind a trail of deep circular footprints that the wind will erase before noon. At the head of the column rides the Dalil, the guide. He is a man of indeterminate age, wrapped in robes the color of dust, his face almost entirely hidden by the folds of his headscarf. He holds the life of the caravan in his hands. In this ocean of identical dunes, where one wave of sand looks exactly like the next, getting lost is a death sentence. He possesses no compass, no map, and no sextant. His navigation is an internal, intuitive art form passed down through generations of blood and survival. He reads the landscape like a scholar reads a manuscript. He notices the subtle asymmetry of a dune's crest, telling him the direction of the prevailing wind. He observes the ripple marks on the sand, knowing that the steeper side faces away from the wind. He looks for the color of the sand. The shift from red to yellow might indicate a specific wadi or the approach of a salt flat. He uses landmarks that would be invisible to a stranger. A blackened rock the size of a fist, a withered acacia bush, the bleaching bones of a long-dead camel. These are his waypoints. He sits high in his saddle, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon, his mind constructing a three-dimensional map of the route ahead. He does not hesitate. He steers his camel with a slight tap of his stick or a shift of his weight, guiding the entire line along the path of least resistance. He knows where the sand is soft and treacherous, and where it is firm enough to support the weight of the laden beasts. He is the captain of the ship, steering by the ancient, silent signs of the earth, leading his charges through the labyrinth of the empty quarter with the confidence of a man walking through his own garden. As the morning matures into the forenoon, the sun begins to assert its dominance. The pleasant warmth of the early hours evaporates, replaced by a radiant heat that presses down from the sky and reflects up from the sand. The desert becomes a kiln. The men respond by withdrawing into them. They pull the ends of their gutra, the headscarf, across their faces, leaving only a narrow slit for their eyes. This fabric filter protects the lungs from the dust and retains the moisture of their breath. They wrap their cloaks tighter, paradoxically using layers of wool to insulate their bodies against the external heat, creating a trapped layer of air that remains at body temperature. The camels, too, adapt. They cease their occasional grazing on passing shrubs and focus entirely on the march. Their nostrils, capable of closing completely, narrow to thin slits to minimize water loss. The caravan enters a state of collective trance known as the kif. It is a semi-meditative state induced by the heat, the silence, and the rhythmic swaying of the saddle. The mind detaches from the monotony of the landscape. The rider is awake, yet dreaming. Time seems to stretch and distort. An hour passes in what feels like a minute. A minute stretches into an hour. The horizon dances and shimmers in the heat haze. the line between earth and sky blurring into a watery mirage. The world is reduced to the rhythmic thud swish of the camel's feet and the blinding brightness of the sand. They are moving through a void of light and heat, suspended in the amber of the eternal present, moving without thinking, surviving without striving. Hanging from the saddles of the camels, swinging in time with their stride, are the gerber, the waterskins. These are not merely containers. They are the most precious objects in the caravan. Made from the cured hide of a goat, turned inside out and sewn watertight, they are the only barrier between life and dehydration. The water inside is not cool in the traditional sense, but the genius of the gerber lies in its porosity. The leather allows a tiny amount of water to seep through to the surface, where it evaporates in the dry air. This evaporation draws heat away from the skin, keeping the main body of water within at a tolerable temperature, significantly cooler than the surrounding air. The men can hear the water sloshing inside, glug, 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 a sound that is music to the thirsty ear. Discipline is absolute. No man drinks without need. When the thirst becomes a sharp pain in the throat, a rider will unhook a small skin, untie the leather thong at the neck, and take a measured mouthful. The water tastes of the goat hide, of the resin used to seal the seams, and of the minerals of the last well. It is a distinct, heavy flavor, but to the parched tongue it is sweeter than honey. It washes away the dust and cools the core. They do not gulp, they sip, holding the liquid in their mouths to moisten the membranes before swallowing. The water is life, carried on the flank of a beast, sloshing rhythmically in the sun, a finite treasure that must be guarded with the same vigilance as gold. The landscape begins to undergo a slow geological transition. The rolling, soft ocean of the sand dunes, the Nafford, gradually gives way to a vast flat plain known as the Serene. This is a gravel desert, a flat expanse of hard-packed earth covered in millions of small black pebbles. The visual world changes from the soft curves of apricot sand to a stark geometric flatness of black and grey. The sound of the march changes instantly. The soft, muffled swish of the sand is replaced by a sharp, rhythmic crunching. Crunch, click, crunch. The hard hooves of the camels strike the stones with a percussive beat that rings in the clear air. The heat here is even more intense, as the black stones absorb the solar radiation and radiate it back upwards. The horizon is a perfect unbroken line, sharp as a knife edge, separating the dark earth from the pale bleached blue of the sky. In the distance, the heat haze creates the illusion of water. The sarab, it looks like a shimmering lake of blue reflecting the sky, promising cool relief. It is a cruel trick of physics, a refraction of light through layers of air of different densities. The Dalil does not even glance at it. He knows it is a ghost. He keeps the caravan on a straight line, navigating by the distant shape of a mountain range that is merely a purple smudge on the edge of the world. The camels dislike the stones. They must place their feet carefully to avoid bruising their pads. The pace slows slightly, the rhythm becoming more staccato. They are tiny specks moving across an infinite anvil, exposed and vulnerable, crawling across the hard, hot skin of the planet. As the caravan trudges across the endless black pavement of the Serene, the silence becomes a physical weight, heavier than the sun. The rhythmic crunching of the hooves is the only sound in the world. To break this monotony and to encourage the weary beasts, one of the riders begins to sing. This is the Huda, the ancient art of camel singing. His voice is high, clear, and nasal, designed to cut through the dry air and travel over the wind. The melody is simple and repetitive, rising and falling in perfect synchronization with the swaying gait of the camels. He does not sing of war or politics. He sings of the things that matter to the herd. He sings of the cool water in the deep wells of the Al Juf. He sings of the sweet, green acacia leaves in the high wadis. He sings of the rest that waits at the end of the day. The effect on the animals is immediate and visible. The camels prick their ears forward, rotating them towards the sound. Their pace quickens slightly, their stride becoming more fluid. They are sensitive creatures, lovers of music, and the familiar rhythm of the huda soothes their nerves and distracts them from the heat. The song floats over the desolate landscape, a fragile thread of human culture spun out against the indifferent geology. It is a lonely sound, yet beautiful. A solitary voice asserting presence in the void. The other men listen in silence, their heads bowed against the glare, letting the melody carry them forward. For a brief time the heat seems to recede, pushed back by the power of the song, as the caravan moves forward inside a bubble of rhythm and rhyme. In the distance, the relentless flat line of the horizon is finally broken by a jagged shape rising from the heat haze. It is a jebel, a solitary sandstone outcrop that has withstood the erosion of the wind for eons. It stands like a ruined fortress, dark red and brown against the pale sky. The Dalil steers the lead camel towards it. This is the destination for the Kayula, the midday halt. In the punishing heat of the desert noon, travel becomes dangerous for both man and beast. The sun is at its zenith, casting virtually no shadow except directly beneath the body. The glare is blinding. As they approach the rock formation, the scale of it becomes apparent. It is a massive slab of geology, its base eaten away by the wind to form deep overhangs and shallow caves. These shadows are the most valuable resource in the desert right now. They offer a respite from the direct solar radiation. The camels smell the shade. They pick up their feet, moving with renewed purpose towards the dark coolness of the base of the cliff. The rock face is striated with layers of sediment, recording the history of ancient seas that once covered this land. Now, it serves as a parasol for the travelers. The caravan flows around the base of the jebel like a river of wool and leather, seeking the side that is sheltered from the sun. The transition from the blinding brightness of the open plain to the dim, cool shadow of the cliff is a physical shock, a sudden release of tension that runs through the entire line. The command is given to halt. Ich. The camels drop to their knees in the shade of the overhang. The sand here, shielded from the sun for the last few hours, is noticeably cooler. The men slide from their saddles, their legs stiff and heavy from hours of riding. They land on the ground with a soft thud. There is no flurry of activity now, no setting up of tents. The Kayula is a time of minimal exertion. The loads are left on the camels, though the girth straps are loosened to allow the animals to breathe more deeply. The camels stretch their long necks out on the sand, closing their eyes, their flanks heaving gently as they dissipate the heat of the march. The men move slowly, conserving every ounce of moisture. They unroll small rugs or simply clear a smooth patch of sand in the deepest recesses of the shadow. They remove their heavy head ropes and loosen their scarves. Their faces are mask-like, coated in a fine layer of dust that clings to the sweat. They pass a water skin around. This time the drinking is a ritual of survival. They rinse their mouths, spitting the dust onto the ground, before swallowing the tepid liquid. It is not enough to quench the thirst fully, but it is enough to keep the blood flowing. There is no fire lit. The thought of heat is unbearable. They eat a handful of dried dates or a piece of hard cheese, chewing slowly. The rock wall behind them radiates a stored warmth, but the shade overhead is a mercy. They lean back against the stone or their saddles, closing their eyes, surrendering to the necessity of the midday rest. A profound stillness descends upon the resting caravan. The desert at noon is a world held in suspension. The sun hammers down on the open plain, bleaching the color from the stones, but in the shadow of the jebel time seems to stop. The men lie in various poses of repose, some flat on their backs with their arms thrown over their eyes, others curled on their sides. They do not sleep deeply. It is a light, dozing trance, a hovering between wakefulness and oblivion. The silence is different from the silence of the night. It is a buzzing, vibrating silence, underscored by the faint, high-pitched stridulation of unseen insects hiding in the rock crevices. A rock agama, a lizard with rough, scaly skin the color of the sandstone, emerges from a crack. It does little push-ups, bobbing its blue head, watching the intruders with a prehistoric, unblinking eye. It scuttles across the sand, stopping in a patch of sunlight to absorb the heat that the men are fleeing. A desert lark, small and brown, lands in the shadow of a camel, pecking at a dropped crumb of bread. Peck, hop, peck. The camel does not move. It is a statue of patience. The air in the shade is dry and still. The sweat dries on the men's skin, leaving a fine crust of salt. They breathe shallowly, minimizing the effort of the lungs. They are waiting out the sun. They are waiting for the great golden disk to begin its descent, for the angle of the light to soften, for the world to become hospitable to movement. Once again, 2 hours pass in this state of suspended animation. Slowly, imperceptibly, the shadows begin to lengthen and shift. The sun has crossed the meridian and is beginning its slide into the west. The fierce, white intensity of the light begins to mellow, turning to a rich, heavy gold. The heat is still intense, but the stinging bite of the noon radiation has softened. The Dalil is the first to stir. He sits up, checking the position of the sun against the jagged skyline of the Jebel. He judges the time with an internal chronometer set by decades of desert life. He stands and stretches, his joints popping in the quiet air. He walks among the sleeping men, nudging them gently with his foot, or calling their names softly. Ya Allah, Ya Allah. O God, O God. It is the call to rise. The men wake groggily, their mouths dry, their limbs heavy. They sit up, blinking against the returning light. They retie their headscarves, wrapping the cloth tight to shield their faces from the afternoon glare. The water skin is passed around one last time. Then they turn to the camels. The beasts know the routine. They rise with less protest than in the morning, resigned to the rhythm of the day. The girths are tightened. Creak, pull, buckle. The riders mount. The caravan reforms its line, moving out from the sanctuary of the shadow back into the open furnace of the plain. They leave the Jebel behind, a silent island of stone in the sea of gravel, and turn their faces toward the horizon, marching into the long, golden afternoon. As the afternoon stretches out, painting the desert in deepening shades of gold and copper, the atmosphere undergoes a subtle but menacing shift. The air, previously still, begins to shudder. A wind rises from the south. At first, just a whisper that dances across the tops of the dunes, sending little rivulets of sand cascading down the slip faces like dry water. This is the simoon, the poison wind. It is a hot, dry breath from the heart of the empty quarter, carrying with it a suspension of fine, microscopic dust. The sky changes color, losing its piercing blue clarity and taking on a bruised, metallic sheen of bronze and violet. The sun becomes a pale, distinct disk behind the veil of dust. Its light filtered and eerie. The men react instantly. They do not panic, for this is the mood of their home, but they take precautions. They rewind their headscarves, pulling the cloth tight across the nose and mouth, leaving only a narrow slit for the eyes to peer through. They pull the ends of their cloaks over their hands. The camels, sensing the change in pressure, lower their heads. They close their nostrils completely. They narrow their eyes, their long double lashes interlocking to form a protective mesh. The caravan presses on, leaning into the wind. The silence of the desert is replaced by a soft, insistent hissing sound. Shh, hiss, as millions of grains of sand scour the earth. The heat of the wind is physical. It feels like the blast from an open oven door, drying the sweat instantly on the skin. It is a test of endurance, a reminder that, in this landscape, humanity exists only by permission of the elements. The line of riders bows their heads, becoming a train of ghosts moving through a fog of gold, persisting against the friction of the wind with the stubborn patience of stone, For an hour, the caravan pushes through the abrasive embrace of the simoon until, as quickly as it rose, the wind begins to die. The dust settles slowly, returning to the earth, and the sky regains its depth of blue, now deepening into the rich indigo of approaching evening. The air clears, and with the clarity comes a new scent. It is faint, almost imperceptible to the city dweller, but to the Bedouin and the beast, it is unmistakable. It is the smell of humidity. It is the scent of damp earth, of green sap, of life. They are approaching the oasis. The camels catch the scent first. Their ears prick forward, their pace quickens without a command from the riders. They let out low, eager rumbles, a sound of anticipation. In the distance, the monotony of the rolling dunes is broken by a dark, irregular line on the horizon. As they draw closer, the shapes resolve into the distinct, feathery silhouettes of date palms, their fronds etched black against the setting sun. Vegetation begins to appear at the feet of the camels, not the dry, thorny scrub of the open desert, but softer, greener grasses. A flock of sand grouse, birds with plumage like camouflaged silk, bursts from a patch of cover, wheeling overhead with sharp, piping calls. Tweet, tweet, whoosh. The mood of the caravan lifts instantly. The tension of the storm and the heat evaporates. The men sit up straighter in their saddles, adjusting their robes. They have crossed the anvil of the sun and reached the shore of the island. The guide smiles behind his veil, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He points ahead with his stick to where the green canopy promises shade, water, and the sweet relief of the night. The caravan winds its way down a gentle slope and enters the perimeter of the oasis. The transition is magical. The dry, crunchy sand gives way to darker, firmer soil packed with clay. The temperature drops 10 degrees in 100 paces. Overhead, the great date palms form a vaulted ceiling, their fronds rustling softly in the evening breeze with a sound like falling rain. In the center of the grove lies the heart of the oasis, the well. It is an ancient structure, a circular mouth of stone rising from the earth, its rim worn smooth and grooved deep by the ropes of 10,000 caravans that have passed this way over the centuries. The camels crowd around the trough, a long basin made of mud brick and lined with limestone plaster. The men dismount quickly. They retrieve the delu, a large leather bucket attached to a long rope made of palm fiber. One of the men stands on the rim of the well. He drops the bucket. It falls into the darkness. Silence. Splash. The sound of the water echoing from the deep shaft is the most beautiful sound in the world. He begins to haul it up. Heave, grunt, creak. The rope strains. The bucket emerges, dripping and heavy, shining with silver water. He tips it into the trough. Whoosh, splash. The water is clear and cool. The camels lower their long necks. The sound of their drinking fills the grove, a loud rhythmic slurping and gulping. They drink deep, their bellies expanding, replenishing the gallons lost to the sun. The men wait their turn, then cup their hands under the flow, splashing the cool liquid over their dust-caked faces, washing away the simoon, baptizing themselves in the lifeblood of the desert. Having watered the beasts and washed the dust from their own skins, the men move a short distance away from the damp bustle of the well to establish their camp for the night. They choose a spot on high ground where the sand is dry and soft, beneath the sheltering arch of a cluster of acacia trees. The setting of the camp here feels different than it did in the open dunes. There is a sense of permanence, of safety. The house of hair is raised again, the wooden mallets driving the pegs into the firmer earth with a solid, resonant thud. The black cloth is unfurled, creating the familiar sanctuary. But here, the walls are left open on one side to admit the pleasant breeze that circulates through the palm grove. The sounds of the evening are richer here. Instead of the absolute silence of the deep desert, there is the chirping of crickets, the rustle of small animals in the undergrowth, and the distant bark of a farm dog from a settled plot on the far side of the oasis. The light is fading fast, the sun having dipped below the horizon, leaving a sky of vibrant purple and red. The men unload the camels, who settle contentedly into the sand, tucking their legs beneath them. The animals seem to know they are safe. Their chewing is slower, their eyes heavy. The men lay out the carpets, the red wool glowing in the twilight. They are tired, but it is a good tiredness, the satisfaction of a journey completed. They light the fire, not just for warmth, but for the comfort of the flame. The orange light dancing against the rough bark of the acacia trees, marking their place in the gathering dark. Tonight, the evening meal will be a special one, a celebration of the arrival at the oasis. The men decide to bake abood, the traditional bread of the desert. One of the men clears a space in the sand near the fire. He takes a large metal bowl and mixes flour, salt, and water. He uses no yeast. The bread must be dense and durable. He kneads the dough with his strong brown hands, folding and pressing it until it forms a smooth elastic ball. Squish, slap, fold. He flattens it out into a large, thick disc, perhaps an inch high. Meanwhile, the fire has been burning down to a bed of fierce, glowing coals. He takes a stick and sweeps the coals aside, revealing the superheated sand beneath. He places the disc of dough directly onto the hot sand. There is no pan, no oven. He then covers the dough with more hot sand, and finally he rakes the glowing embers back over the top of the mound. The bread is now buried, baking in the earth itself. The heat surrounds it from all sides, cooking it evenly. The camp fills with the smell of baking bread, a wholesome, yeasty scent that triggers a primal hunger. After 20 minutes, he checks the mound. He taps the crust with a stick. It sounds hollow. He rakes away the fire and the sand. He lifts the disc of bread, which is now golden brown and hard. He holds it up and strikes it against a rock or his palm. Thwack, thwack, knocking off the loose sand and ash. He breaks it open. Steam rises from the soft, white interior. It is hot, fresh, and smells of smoke and earth. He hands chunks to his companions. They eat it with clarified butter and the last of the dates, the simple flavors magnified by the setting and the labor of the day. The meal of warm bread and dates concludes, and the men settle back against their camel saddles, their stomachs full and their spirits lifted by the sanctuary of the oasis. The atmosphere here is fundamentally different from the austere silence of the open dunes. The oasis is not silent. It is a living, breathing entity. Through the darkness runs the sound of water, a constant, melodious gurgling. This is the sound of the firelight, the ancient irrigation system that channels the water from the well through a network of narrow, mud-lined canals to the roots of the date palms and the vegetable patches. Gurgle, splash, trickle. It is a sound of immense luxury in a land of thirst. The air is humid and fragrant, carrying the scent of damp earth, crushed mint, and the faint, sweet perfume of jasmine blooming in the cool night. The darkness is alive with the chorus of the oasis dwellers. Crickets chirp in the tall grass. Creak, 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 a rhythmic pulsing that merges with the rustling of the palm fronds overhead. A tree frog, green and tiny, calls from the edge of the water channel, a sharp, resonant note. These sounds wrap around the camp, creating a curtain of white noise that feels protective and enclosing. The men are no longer specks on an infinite horizon. They are inhabitants of a garden, enclosed by the high walls of the palm trees, sheltered from the wind and the stars. The firelight reflects off the nearby water channel, casting dancing ripples of light onto the underside of the palm leaves, creating a mesmerizing, moving canopy of gold and black that watches over the resting travelers. In the quiet indolence of the evening, one of the men turns to the necessary task of maintaining his gear. He pulls his jambia from the sash at his waist. This is the traditional curved dagger of the region, a badge of honor and manhood as much as a weapon. The sheath is made of wood covered in ornate silver filigree, tarnished now by the sulfur of the desert air. He sits cross-legged by the fire, a small rag and a pot of oil beside him. He draws the blade. Shing. The steel gleams in the firelight, curved like the crescent moon. It is not a weapon of war, but a tool of daily life, used for cutting meat, trimming rope and slaughtering sheep. He pours a drop of oil onto the cloth. He begins to rub the blade. Swish, rub, swish. The motion is slow and circular. He is cleaning away the dust and the salts of the journey that could pit the metal. He works with the focus of a jeweler, inspecting the edge for nicks. He moves to the handle, which is made of polished horn, smooth and warm to the touch. He rubs the silver of the sheath until it catches the orange light of the embers. This act of maintenance is a meditation. It is a way of honoring the tools that sustain his life. The smell of the oil mixes with the smoke of the fire. Around him, the other men watch or doze, lulled by the repetitive motion of his hand and the soft snick of the blade as he finally slides it back into the sheath, the metal resting safe and clean against the coming day. The intimacy of the camp is gently interrupted by the approach of a figure emerging from the shadows of the palm grove. In the desert, an approaching stranger is usually a cause for alarm, but in the neutral ground of the oasis, it is an opportunity for the sacred duty of diyafa, or hospitality. The figure steps into the circle of the firelight. He is a man of another tribe, his robes dusty, his face wrapped against the night. He raises a hand, in peace. Assalamu alaikum, he says, peace be upon you. The men of the caravan rise as one. Wa alaikum assalam, they respond in unison, and upon you be peace. There is no interrogation, no asking of names or business. The code of the desert demands that a guest be fed and sheltered for 3 days and 3 nights before any questions are asked. The host gestures to the best place by the fire, the spot protected from the draft. Tafadal, he urges, please honor us. The stranger sits. Fresh coffee is immediately poured into a clean cup. Dates are pushed towards him. The bread, still warm, is broken and offered. The stranger accepts with a nod of profound gratitude. He eats and drinks, the dust of his own journey washing away with the coffee. He is no longer a stranger. He is a dayef, a guest sent by God. The circle of the camp expands to include him. The firelight plays on his face as he lowers his veil, revealing a visage weathered by the same sun and wind that has sculpted them all. For this night, he is a brother of the fire, protected by the unwritten laws of the sand that bind all travelers together against the void. Once the guest has been fed and the coffee has warmed his blood, the silence is broken by the exchange of al-akhbar, the news. In a land without telegraphs or newspapers, the traveler is the internet of the desert. The host asks politely about the direction of the rains. The guest speaks. His voice is raspy but clear. He tells of a great thunderstorm in the north, near the mountains of Shamar, that has filled the wadis with running water. He speaks of the price of camel wool in the markets of Hofuf, which has risen since the last moon. He tells of a dispute between 2 clans over a grazing right, now settled by the arbitration of a wise sheikh. The men of the caravan listen with rapt attention. This is not idle gossip, it is vital intelligence. It tells them where to graze their herds next season, where to trade their goods, and which paths to avoid. The news travels in a great slow circle around the peninsula, passed from fire to fire, from mouth to ear. The guest weaves a narrative of the world beyond the oasis. He describes the ships he saw at the coast, great vessels of iron that smoke like volcanoes. He describes a new well dug by a wealthy merchant that yields sweet water. The listeners nod, storing each detail in their memories. They ask clarifying questions, testing the accuracy of the report. The fire burns low as the talk continues, the circle of men united by the flow of information, knitting the disparate points of the desert into a coherent map of human activity. The night in the oasis advances, and the talk eventually winds down, replaced by the heavy silence of exhaustion. The guest is given a sheepskin cloak and a pillow, the best sleeping gear the camp can muster. The fire is banked with a large log of acacia wood, which will smolder slowly until dawn. The men settle down to sleep on the soft, clay-packed earth. Sleeping here is different than sleeping in the open dunes. The air is heavier, laden with moisture, which holds the cold in a damp embrace that can seep into the bones. They wrap themselves tightly in their wool. The sounds of the oasis do not. The frogs continue their calling, and the palm fronds whisper and clack in the breeze. Swish, clack, rustle. To a man used to the absolute silence of the deep desert, these sounds are loud, almost distracting, but they are also the sounds of life and abundance. There is no need for a strict guard tonight. The oasis is a place of truce. The camels are hobbled loosely and allowed to graze on the tufts of grass at the edge of the clearing. The leader lies on his back, looking up through the gaps in the palm canopy. He cannot see the full expanse of the Milky Way tonight, only fragments of the starry sky framed by the black, serrated leaves of the trees. He feels enclosed, protected, as if he is sleeping inside a great, living building. The smell of the dying fire mixes with the scent of the wet mud. He closes his eyes, lulled by the gurgling of the water channel, and drifts into a sleep that is deep, humid, and restful, held in the green palm of the desert's hand. The morning in the oasis arrives not with the stark, silent revelation of the open desert, but with a soft green awakening. The air is thick with a mist that has risen from the warm irrigation channels into the cool dawn air, hanging low amongst the palm trunks like a veil of spun silk. The light that filters through the dense canopy above is diffused and gentle, a verdant twilight that paints the camp in shades of moss and jade. The silence of the dunes is gone, replaced by an explosion of avian life. The white-eared bulbul, the nightingale of the palm groves, begins its liquid, warbling call. Tweet-ter-tweet, a sound of pure joy that echoes through the trees. Ring-necked doves coo softly from the fronds, a rhythmic, mournful sound that underpins the morning chorus. The men wake slowly. There is no biting frost here, only a pleasant, damp coolness. They stretch their limbs, feeling the difference in the air. Their skin feels softer, hydrated by the humidity of the night. They do not rush to the fire. Instead, they walk to the water channels. They wash their faces in the running water, which is clear and tepid. They wash their feet, scrubbing away the days of accumulated travel dust. It is a luxury to use water so freely, to see it flowing past without end. The smell of the morning is intoxicating, a mixture of wet clay, the green scent of alfalfa growing in the plots, and the lingering smoke of the wood fires. The urgency of the march is suspended here. The sun is kept at bay by the leaves, and the men move with the leisurely grace of those who have found a temporary paradise in the midst of the burning sands. With the sun climbing the ladder of the palm trunks, the commerce of the morning begins. A local farmer, a man with skin like old mahogany and hands calloused by the hoe, approaches the camp. He pushes a wooden cart with a squeaking wheel. Squeak, creak, squeak. He brings the bounty of the oasis. He does not want money. In the deep desert, silver coins are heavy and often useless. He wants trade. The caravan leader opens a leather sack and reveals a block of rock salt, mined from the great salt flats to the north. It is white and crystalline, a mineral essential for life. The farmer's eyes light up. He offers in exchange a bundle of fresh green alfalfa, still wet with dew. This is a feast for the camels. He adds a basket of small green limes, their skins bursting with fragrant oil, and a few bunches of fresh onions. The deal is struck with a handshake and a blessing. Barakallah fik, God bless you. The exchange is slow and polite, accompanied by the inevitable offer of tea. The camels smell the alfalfa. They crane their long necks, their nostrils flaring at the scent of the fresh greens. When the bundles are thrown before them, they eat with audible gusto, the sound of their crunching filling the air. This is the symbiosis of the desert. The nomad brings the salt and the news from the outside world, and the settler provides the green life of the earth. It is a cycle of mutual survival that has bound the wanderer and the farmer together for thousands of years, a quiet transaction occurring in the dappled shade of the date palms. Before the departure can be authorized, the most critical task of the journey must be performed: the filling of the gerber. The water skins, now flaccid and empty, are gathered from the saddles. The men carry them to the source, the head of the Fallard channel where the water emerges pure from the deep earth. This is a task that requires care. The skins are inspected for leaks. A pinhole in the desert is a disaster. The leather is stiff from the dry air. They submerge the skins in the channel, letting the leather soak and soften, turning dark and pliable. Splash, soak, rub. Then they hold the neck of the skin open against the flow. The water rushes in, glug, 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 bloating the skin until it looks like a sleek, sleeping animal. The weight of a full skin is substantial, perhaps 50 pounds of liquid life. They lift them out, water streaming from the sides. The necks are twisted tight and tied with rawhide thongs, knotted with a specific hitch that will not slip under the jostling of the march but can be opened by a thirsty man with one hand. They rub the exterior of the skins with a little oil to keep the leather supple and to prevent cracking in the sun. The full skins are piled near the camels, a mound of cool, wet shapes. They represent the timeline of survival. The caravan now has 5 days of life stored in leather. The men treat them with reverence, checking the knots twice, wiping away the grit, ensuring that the vessel is worthy of the precious cargo it holds. The sun is now high enough to dapple the ground with coins of light, and the time for rest has ended. The command to load is given. The camels, their bellies full of alfalfa and their bodies rehydrated, seem larger and more vibrant than they did the day before. Their coats are groomed, the dust brushed away. They rise with a surge of power, lifting the heavy loads of water and dates as if they were feathers. The camp is struck. The fire is drowned with a splash of water and covered with earth. The men wrap their scarves around their faces once more, preparing for the return of the dust. They mount up. The leader looks back at the clearing, checking for anything left behind: a knife, a rope, a stray bag. The ground is clean. They have left no mark but the flattened grass and the ashes of their fire. He raises his hand. The caravan begins to move. They wind their way back through the labyrinth of the palm trunks, the sound of the hooves changing from the soft thud on sand to the firmer clop on the clay paths. The bird song fades behind them. The cool humidity of the grove begins to thin. The local children run alongside the camels for 100 yards, laughing and waving, before dropping back. The riders do not look back. Their eyes are fixed forward, adjusting once again to the bright, uncompromising light that waits beyond the tree line. They are leaving the island, casting off the lines, and setting their prow once more towards the open sea. The caravan reaches the edge of the palm grove, the physical boundary where the domain of the water ends and the empire of the sand begins. It is a sharp line. One moment, the camel's hoof is on dark, fertile earth. The next, it strikes the loose, blowing sand of the dune. The transition is sensory and immediate. The shade vanishes, stripped away as if a roof has been torn off. The sun strikes the riders with a physical force, a heavy, hot hand pressing down on their shoulders. The smell of the green plants and the damp soil is instantly cut off, replaced by the dry, mineral scent of hot quartz and ozone. The sound of the wind returns, a low, constant whistling that was absent in the shelter of the trees. The horizon opens up, expanding from the enclosed intimacy of the garden to the terrifying, magnificent infinity of the desert. The men squint against the sudden glare, their pupils contracting. They pull their cloaks tighter, insulating themselves against the heat that radiates from the ground. They have crossed the threshold. The softness of the oasis is already a memory, a dream of the night. Ahead lies the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, a landscape of pure geometry and silence. The camels fall into their rhythmic swaying gait, sway left, sway right, and the long line of shadows stretches out across the pristine, wind-rippled sand. They are back in the void, tiny specks of life crawling across the golden face of eternity, moving slowly into the blinding heart of the day. Having left the verdant embrace of the oasis, the caravan pushes deeper into the true desert, the ocean without water. The landscape here changes again. The dunes become colossal, mountains of sand rising 300 or 400 feet into the air. These are the star dunes, complex, multi-armed pyramids sculpted by winds that blow from all directions. The color of the sand deepens to a rich rusted red, indicating a higher iron content, oxidized over millennia. The scale is overwhelming. The camels look like insects crawling up the flank of a sleeping beast. The ascent of a dune is a labor of physics. The sand on the windward face is packed hard, but it is steep. The camels must place their feet with deliberation, digging their toes in to gain traction. Crunch, slide, step. The riders lean forward in their saddles, shifting their center of gravity to help the animal. The breathing of the camels becomes heavier. Huff, 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 a rhythmic engine noise. They do not go straight up, they switch back, traversing the face in a zigzag pattern to reduce the gradient. The silence here is colossal. The wind is deflected by the sheer mass of the dune, creating pockets of dead calm where the heat builds up, trapped against the sand. It is a vertical world. When they reach the crest, the razor's edge, the wind hits them again, whipping the sand from the peak in a fine spray that stings the skin. The view from the top is a sea of frozen waves, extending to the curvature of the earth, a repetition of red peaks and purple shadows that goes on forever. The descent from the high dune is a controlled fall. The leeward side, the slip face, is at the angle of repose, the steepest angle at which sand can remain stable. It is soft and fluid. The guide leads the way. He urges his camel over the edge. The beast hesitates, then plunges. Whoosh! The camel slides as much as it walks, its large feet acting like snowshoes, surfing down the face of the avalanche. The sand sings. This is the phenomenon of the singing sands, or zaik. As the grains shear against each other, they emit a low booming hum, like the bass note of a cello or the drone of a distant propeller plane. Vrum. The sound vibrates through the camel's legs and into the rider's bones. It is a spooky, ancient voice of the earth. The caravan descends in a cloud of red dust and booming sound. The riders lean back now, bracing their feet, trusting the animal's balance. It is a moment of adrenaline in the slow monotony of the march. They reach the bottom, the interdune valley, where the ground is hard and flat again, often paved with white gypsum or dried mud. The silence returns instantly. The booming stops. They are in the trough of the wave, surrounded by walls of red sand that block out half the sky. They shake the dust from their cloaks and press on, threading the needle between the giants, navigating the labyrinth of the deep interior. As the sun begins its long afternoon decline, the caravan encounters a solitary feature in the emptiness, the tree of life. It is a single, ancient acacia tortilis, the umbrella thorn acacia. It stands alone in the middle of a gravel plain, twisted and gnarled, its bark grey and fissured like elephant skin. It is a miracle of survival. Its taproot goes down perhaps 100 feet, seeking the fossil water deep in the bedrock. Its canopy is flat and wide, shaped by the wind, providing a circle of precious shade. The caravan does not stop, but they pass close to it in a gesture of respect. The branches are adorned with strange fruit, strips of colorful cloth tied to the thorns. These are votive offerings left by passing Bedouin over the years, prayers for a safe journey, for a sick child, for rain. The cloth strips flutter in the wind, faded by the sun to pastel shades of pink and pale blue. Flutter, snap, flutter. The tree is a shrine to endurance. It is a landmark known to every guide in the region, a waypoint that confirms they are on the true path. A few seed pods, twisted and dry, rattle in the breeze. Chicka, chicka, chicka. The camels snatch a mouthful of the lower leaves as they pass, ignoring the sharp white thorns that protect the green. The tree watches them go, a silent sentinel that will remain long after the footprints of the caravan have been erased, holding its lonely vigil in the heart of the waste. The day begins to wane, and the search for the night's campsite begins. The guide is looking for a specific combination of features: shelter from the wind, a patch of soft sand for the camels, and crucially, fuel for the fire. He spots a shallow wadi, a dry riverbed that perhaps sees water once every 5 years. Along its banks grow clumps of arfaj, the small perennial shrub that is the staple firewood of the desert. He raises his hand. The signal is given. The camels turn off the main track and descend into the slight depression of the wadi. The routine of the camp setup begins, but tonight there is a different energy. They are deep in the wild now, far from the safety of the oasis. The men are more alert. They arrange the camels in a tighter circle, creating a living wall around the sleeping area. The house of hair is pitched lower to the ground to present a smaller profile to the wind. The fire pit is dug deeper. As they unload the gear, they find a scorpion clinging to the underside of a saddlebag, a yellow death stalker. One of the men flicks it away with his camel stick, unperturbed. It is just a neighbor. The sun touches the horizon, and the sky explodes into a violence of color: blood red, bruised purple, electric orange. The shadows of the camels stretch out for half a mile, thin and grotesque. The temperature plummets. The transition from the furnace of the day to the refrigerator of the night is rapid and brutal. The men pull on their farwa coats immediately. The day is dead. The night of the deep desert has begun. With the camp established and the fire crackling, the evening meal is prepared. Tonight, there is a treat. One of the men has spotted a doob, a large spiny-tailed lizard sunning itself on a rock earlier in the day. It was caught with a quick snare. To the Western palate it might seem strange, but to the Bedouin it is a source of clean white protein, tasting somewhat like chicken. The lizard is skinned and cleaned, then roasted directly on the coals. The smell of the roasting meat is rich and savory, a welcome change from the diet of dates and dry bread. As they eat, the conversation turns to the stars. The guide points upwards. In this remote location, the lack of light pollution is absolute. The stars are terrifyingly bright. He points to Al-Jadi, the pole star, the anchor of the north. He traces the river of heaven, the Milky Way. He tells the story of how the stars were used to navigate the great sand seas by his ancestors before the time of the Prophet. He explains the mansion of the moon, the 28 sectors of the sky that the moon passes through, each associated with a specific weather pattern or agricultural task. The men listen, chewing the meat, their eyes turned upwards. They are sitting in a planetarium, learning the celestial mechanics that govern their lives. The firelight flickers on their upturned faces, ancient astronomers in wool robes, reading the oldest book in the world, written in lights across the roof of the night. As the embers of the lizard roast fade and the coffee pot makes its final round, the mood in the camp shifts towards introspection. The deep desert has a way of stripping away the trivial. A man sits a little apart from the group, taking out a rababa. This is the Bedouin fiddle, a simple instrument with a single string made of horsehair, stretched over a rectangular wooden frame covered in skin. He draws the bow across the string. Scrape, whine, ha! The sound is mournful, high-pitched, and hauntingly beautiful. It mimics the human voice, or perhaps the wind sighing through the dunes. He begins to play a slow, improvisational melody. It is not a song with a beat. It is a musical stream of consciousness. The notes hang in the cold air, trembling like the stars above. The other men stop talking. They lean back against their saddles, closing their eyes. The music speaks of the loneliness of the shepherd, the distance between lovers, the vastness of the empty quarter. It is the soundtrack of their souls. The camels, hearing the music, stop their chewing and turn their heads towards the sound. The single string vibrates with a frequency that seems to resonate with the landscape itself. For 20 minutes, the only reality is the firelight, the stars, and the crying of the rhubarb. It is a moment of pure, artistic expression in a land that demands total pragmatism. When the music finally stops, the silence that rushes back in feels louder than before, a heavy curtain falling on the performance of the night. The musician wraps his instrument in a cloth and lays it gently atop his saddlebag. The camp prepares for sleep. But tonight, the leader takes an extra precaution. They are in the territory of the wolf. The Arabian wolf is small, pale, and elusive, but a pack can take a young camel or tear into a water skin. He walks the perimeter of the camp. He checks the hobbles of the camels, ensuring they are secure but not chafing. He piles extra brushwood near the fire, instructing the man on the first watch to keep the flames visible. The fire is the primary deterrent. Wild things fear the red flower. He listens to the darkness. He hears the wind moving the sand grains, hiss, hiss, a sound like dry rain. He hears the distant call of a stone curlew. He smells the cold iron scent of the sand. He feels the weight of the responsibility. He is the shepherd of this small flock of men and beasts. He returns to the center of the circle and lies down, placing his dagger within easy reach of his hand. He pulls his heavy sheepskin cloak over his head. The darkness under the wool is warm and familiar. He says his final prayers, asking for protection from the evil of the dark when it settles. His breathing slows. The camp becomes a cluster of dark, breathing mounds under the glittering, indifferent watch of the winter constellations. High above the sleeping camp, the moon rises. It is a waning crescent, a scimitar of pale burn hanging in the eastern sky. Its light is silver and cold, transforming the desert into a landscape of pewter and ink. The dunes cast long, sharp shadows that look like holes in the world. The light catches the crystals of gypsum in the sand, making the ground sparkle as if dusted with frost. A desert owl, the pharaoh eagle owl, launches itself from a rocky outcrop a mile away. It flies on silent wings, a ghost of feathers. It sees the camp below, the smoldering red eye of the fire, the dark shapes of the camels, the sleeping men. It circles once, silent as smoke, before drifting away on the thermal currents. The desert at night is not empty. It is a busy, silent metropolis of the nocturnal. Beetles trudge up the slopes. Vipers slide through the dust, tasting the air with forked tongues. Foxes trot on light feet, their large ears swiveling like radar dishes. The caravan is just another feature of the terrain, a temporary obstacle to be navigated around. The moon climbs higher, washing out the fainter stars, bathing the sleeping travelers in a bath of cold, serene light. It is a scene of utter peace, a frozen moment of beauty in the harsh cycle of survival. The night passes in its slow, majestic rotation. The watchman changes. The fire is fed. The stars wheel overhead. Now, drifting away from the specific details of the camp, let your mind expand to encompass the entire desert. Imagine floating high above the Arabian Peninsula. Below you lies a vast ocean of sand, stretching from the Red Sea to the Persian Gulf. It is not flat, it is textured like the skin of an orange, covered in billions of ripples and millions of dunes. It is a landscape of curves and lines, painted in shades of ochre, red, and silver. You can see other tiny sparks of light scattered across the darkness, other campfires of other caravans, separated by hundreds of miles of emptiness. They are like solitary lighthouses in a dark sea. You can feel the silence of the continent. It is a silence that has existed for millions of years, broken only by the wind and the thunder. It is a peaceful silence, a rest from the noise of history. The desert is a place of purification. It strips away the unnecessary, leaving only the essential, the fire, the water, the star, the breath. You are floating in this pure, clean air, suspended above the sleeping world, part of the great slow breathing of the earth. Gently descend now from the high atmosphere, drifting back down towards the earth, but not to the desert camp. Guide your awareness back to your own sanctuary, your own room. Feel the transition from the vast open space of the dunes to the enclosed safety of your home. Your walls are solid and protective. Your window keeps out the wind and the cold. Your bed is softer than the desert sand, warmer than the sheepskin cloak. Feel the weight of your blankets. They are your house of hair, your shelter against the night. Listen to the sounds of your own environment. Perhaps you hear the wind outside, or the hum of the city, or the quiet settling of your house. These are the sounds of your safety. You do not need to keep watch. You do not need to tend the fire. You do not need to worry about the wolf or the water. Your journey for the day is done. You have crossed your own desert, navigated your own obstacles, and now you have reached your oasis. The water is drawn, the tent is pitched, the fire is lit. You are safe. You are warm. You are ready to rest. Bring your attention to your physical body. Let the relaxation start at your feet. Imagine the warm, heavy sand of the oasis beneath them. Let that warmth travel up your legs, relaxing the muscles of your calves and thighs. Your hips are heavy, sinking into the mattress. Your back is supported, the spine uncurling, releasing the tension of the saddle. Your shoulders drop, the weight of the day's pack slipping off. Your arms are loose and heavy at your sides. Your hands are open, the fingers uncurled. You are no longer holding the reins. You are no longer gripping the staff. Your neck is soft. Your head is heavy on the pillow. The muscles of your face smooth out. The lines of concentration around your eyes disappear. Your jaw is loose. Your tongue rests gently in your mouth. You are completely at rest. You are a statue of peace, resting in the cool, quiet shade of your own personal oasis. The heat of the day is gone. The work is finished. There is nothing to do but breathe. As your body sleeps, let your mind follow. Visualize the campfire in the desert one last time. See the flames flickering low, turning from orange to a deep, pulsing red. Watch as the embers slowly fade, covered by the soft grey ash. The light dims. The circle of illumination shrinks, drawing closer and closer until it is just a tiny spark in the dark. Then let it go out. Puff. The light is gone. The desert is dark. The tent is dark. Your mind is dark. It is a velvet darkness, soft and comforting, It is the darkness of deep restorative sleep. There are no images now, no words, no plans. There is only the quiet rhythm of your own breathing, rising and falling like the slow swell of the dunes, in and out, in and out. You are drifting on a sea of calm. You are floating weightless in the void, held by the gravity of sleep. The stars are watching over you. The silence is wrapping around you. You are drifting deeper and deeper into the peace of the night. The images of the camels, the dunes, and the Bedouin fade away completely now. They dissolve into the mist of dreams. You are leaving the history behind and entering the present moment of sleep. The journey of the caravan continues in the archives of time, but your journey is here, in the stillness of your room. You are safe. You are loved. You are protected. The night is a friend. It is a time for healing, for rebuilding, for growing. Just as the desert rests in the cool of the night to survive the sun of the day, so too do you rest now to prepare for your tomorrow. Accept the gift of the darkness. Sink into it. Trust it. It will carry you safely to the morning. You are heavy. You are warm. You are asleep. We have walked the long road together. We have drunk the bitter coffee and the sweet tea. We have sat by the fire and listened to the poet. We have crossed the singing sands and rested in the shade of the rock. We have seen the stars wheel overhead and the moon rise over the empty quarter. We have touched the texture of a life lived in harmony with the harshest landscape on earth. We have learned the lessons of the Bedouin: patience, endurance, hospitality, and the profound value of rest. Keep them in the library of your dreams. The caravan sleeps now. The camels are still. The fire is cold. The desert is silent. And you, too, are part of this great, quiet stillness. And so, our chronicle of the desert caravan draws to its close. The track fades into the dunes, and the wind erases the footprints. We leave the travelers there, sleeping under the vast Arabian sky, waiting for the dawn that is still hours away. The story is finished, but the peace remains. You have traveled far, you have listened well, and now you have earned this deep restorative slumber. The night is yours. The darkness is a blanket of wool and stars. Pull it up to your... Close your eyes. Sleep now, safe in the knowledge that the guide knows the way, the water is secure, and the oasis is waiting in the dream. Good night.